Good morning and welcome to the Seneca County IDA. We have potentially 3 separate meetings today. These are audit committee meetings for the IDA, EDC, and Seneca County Funding Corps. So we'll start off first with the Seneca County Industrial Development Agency Audit Committee meeting. First item on the agenda. Everyone has a copy of the meeting minutes from our last meeting on March 17th. Any corrections, additions? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve.
I'll make so motion.
Second? I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Motion carried. Next item is the engagement letter for the 2023 audit.
So we received the engagement letter from Mengel Metzger Bar to conduct our 2023 IDA audit. You'll notice a couple pages in their proposed pricing for the year. So they're proposing the regular audit at $11,950 and the single audit, which is for our revolving loan fund program, at $2,075. Overall, that's about a $400 increase from the previous year. One thing I will note, because we had talked a little bit about some oversight issues and discrepancies with this year's audit process. So one thing that Mengel Metzger and Bar has proposed would be adding a pre-audit meeting sometime, pending approval of this engagement letter, a pre-audit meeting summer time frame to really set expectations and make sure that, we know what's going to be expected of us so we can start gathering information early, and then they also know what has been going on. Hopefully make the process go a little more smoothly.
And that would be at their hourly rate?
That would not be any additional fee.
They would be included in the fee.
Oh, great. Good.
Any questions?
Yeah, I think, Bob, really, this is really the standard
Right, it's standard language.
what we've done before.
You also may want to indicate that we did receive their quality control audit report as well.
Correct.
Which is a required item every 3 years.
Okay.
And that's done by another firm. It's an auditor of a firm, actually.
Yes, auditor of the auditor.
Yeah.
So any reservations approving this or recommending this for the full board for approval?
No.
Okay. So you have a motion to approve the engagement letter.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Motion carried. Next item is the long-term forecast.
Okay, so for the IDA, we have our 2 different long-term forecasts. The first that I will review is our worst case, which is our known revenues against budgeted expenses. The second is when we forecast $400,000 in income versus budgeted expenses. So you will see that the first column here is the forecast for 2023. We are expecting to come in at the end of the year with just over $2.3 million in operating cash available. Some of that could be subject to change depending on the timing of agency fees, but there's still a few projects, and we can get to those in the actual budget. Projects that have been approved that we expect to close on hopefully before the end of the year. Our 2024 budget is the next column, and that is what we'll be talking about in further detail. You'll see the agency fees is quite high. It's budgeted at $1.318 million. That's because of the Trelina project and our anticipated timing as of now as to the closing of that project. Other than that, there's really nothing out of the ordinary there, but that would obviously increase our cash on hand at the end of the year to just over $3.7 million. The changes, so then in 2025, that's when things really change on the revenue side again, because this is a worst case scenario. So that first line, we have agency fees at 36. That is the combination of the Scepter pilot and also the Finger Lakes Rail pilot that we get a portion of. You'll see that actually decreases a little bit into 2026 because that's when the Finger Lakes Rail pilot drops off. You'll also notice in 2025 that we no longer have the annual 100,000 from Del Lago. 2024 is the last year for that, and then we have included in here the 54 that we get on average from the county, although obviously that is not a guaranteed number, but that has been fairly consistent, so we felt it was safe to include in this estimate. So you'll see that when we go out to our 2029 projections, we have operating cash available of $1.337 million. So not terrible, but obviously something we need to keep an eye on with some of these regular income streams starting to drop off. On the $400,000 side, things are obviously much stronger there. Hold on, I'm looking, there's a discrepancy that I'm just noticing now with our budget 2024 column. And I'm not sure, I think our operating expenditures on our known revenues is too low on the first one. For some reason, that's 111, I think that was an
Should
error
be
that we didn't
the,
catch.
510.
should be the
Yeah, it
510.
just didn't carry
yeah.
down when
Yeah.
it flips out.
So what we'll do is we will update that
Yeah.
before we send out the board packets. So apologies for that. So the actual number that should have been on that first page is 3.35 million.
Which obviously changes the 2029 number as well.
It would, yes. By about 400,000. So in this other scenario where we're forecasting 400,000 in income, which again tends to have us at a net loss each year, although we've always chosen this 400,000 because that seems to be a pretty safe regular target as to where we end up, and I think you could even make the case of, you know, on average probably increasing that number based on some past performance, but we would have 2.533 million in cash available at the end of 2029. Any questions on the long-term forecast?
No. Unfortunately, yeah, it's too much of a year-to-year operation.
Right. It's easy to project your expenses, but the revenue
The
side
revenue is very difficult. Unfortunately, except for a few years, we've always exceeded projections.
Yeah, we've been pretty strong lately. Some of it has come down to timing of projects, but obviously this year we have seen a little bit of a decrease in what has been traditional project flow since I've started. Is attributed to the increase in interest rates. I think people are, you know, choosing not necessarily to move forward with projects right now. Or small projects that don't justify necessarily coming to the IDA for assistance because of the expense of applying for that assistance. So something to maybe consider going forward, we've talked about this before, but would be a way to help businesses that have smaller projects that don't fall under traditional IDA incentives. You know, what types of things can we do to help incentivize their growth?
Yeah,
So that's
you
something
said it
we're
was at
exploring.
least, someone had to have a project, what, at least $250,000, $500,000 before
More,
even more.
half million at least,
Least.
but even that is kind of, for, I mean, so what we've done is there have been a few projects where we've modeled for folks, you know, here's what your benefits would be, and it is always more than what the cost is, but the problem is if we're modeling over a period of 10 years, for some people they're like, well, it's so small and that's over such a long span of time, like it's not worth all of the upfront payments of the agency fee and the labor monitoring and everything else. So I get it. It's probably safer to say that the project threshold would be about $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we'd entertain something smaller than that, but most folks haven't found that it's worth
Yeah.
doing anything unless they've also like Best Made was sort of a historically smaller project for us, but that was also a property sale and a loan. So there was a whole package there that
Made it work.
make sense. Okay, so moving on to the IDA budget. So you have two different budget documents. The one is at a more detailed level. So this will show you what our 2022 actuals were, what we budgeted for 2023, what our actuals are for 2023 for the first half of the year, what we're forecasting for the remainder of the year, and then what we're proposing for 2024. So, and feel free to jump in and ask questions if anybody has them. I think for our purposes, it'd probably be most helpful to start with what we're forecasting in 2023 a little bit, and then talk about how that's comparing to what we're proposing to budget for next year. So we've talked about this on the agency fee. We're forecasting a total of $624,217 by the end of the year. As of June, we had received just under $200,000. So where we would be expecting the additional $400,000 would be from the New York Lodi 1 solar project that was approved, I think over a year ago now. The Carnegie Solar project, which we have closed on, and I believe we've received the agency fee for that. The two new Lodi solar projects, and then the Seneca Garden Solar, which we've also closed on and received the agency fee. So it's really the three Lodi solar projects at this point that we're not 100% sure of the timing, but we would anticipate those closing this year. The difference then being, of course, in the 2024 proposed budget, the $1.318 million. So again, we have that Scepter pilot payment at just over $32,000, Finger Lakes Rails estimated $4,000, and then the Trelina agency fee of $1.282 million.
Well, you have a sense of what the timing of that'll take place in 2024?
I believe their target was a fall closing on
So
that. It would be near
about a
the
year
end of
from
the
now?
year. Yes.
Okay. Just a second.
About a year from now, possibly a little bit more. It was later in the next year. We're not proposing any change to the county support, although certainly as we have a clearer sense of where things are going with Willard and potentially other projects, there may be a need to go to the county in the future for increased support. The Del Lago, so that's the rent and lease income of $100,000. That's gonna stay through 2024.
And then it goes away.
And then it goes away. The RLF income, that is purely the interest earned on the loans. So that gets put back into the loan fund, but we would estimate that based on our current loans at being just over $6,000, which is obviously a little less than what we had for 2023. That's just because of the timing of when some loans had been paid off. IDA interest income, so this would be our bank accounts and our CDs. That's actually proposed to be up a little bit because of interest rates being higher, so in that sense it's good for us.
Kelly, what rate did you use?
5,
Five.
yes.
So that's, about a $11,000 increase there. And then we always put in a $2,000 miscellaneous income in the budget, but don't tend to have anything necessarily that falls under that category. So as of this year, we're forecasting $823,000, and we're budgeting $1.529 million for 2024.
Okay.
Moving on to operating expenses. So payroll, we're expecting this year to come out at $207,880. We always put in these budget purposes a 3% increase, so that's how you get the 214. And then obviously the benefits are adjusted according, to the current rates.
Any issue with insurance, health insurance?
No?
What I'm saying is that those rates are going up, so. that's-
Right. Yeah, I just I have to budget what I know, so I don't know the current rates
Mhm.
today.
So that's one of those cases where, we had budgeted 129 in 2023 for benefit. We're forecasting 136, so obviously that is one of the items that end of year is going to be over budget. So it's quite possible that we're under budgeting for 2024. Certainly, if anybody has a number they would like to see instead, we can, you know, make a correction. But as Kelly said, she's working based on, you know, current available knowledge.
I believe same with New York State retirement, that varies depending
That's right.
Yeah.
on everything, so you don't know that until
Mhm.
later.
Professional fees and services, so this is one where it's maybe helpful to look at the itemized breakdown here. So we're budgeting a total of 101. We're forecasting for 2023 about 68,000. The difference being, so every year we kind of put 10,000 aside for engineering as sort of a placeholder. That's mostly in the event that we had a project that we needed engineering or technical support, especially on something like Seeker. We don't expect to use that money for this year, but again, we're putting it there as, you know, a professional services placeholder. The audit fee, again, which we just talked about, that's gone up a little bit. So that's just under 12,000. We've got 5,000 in the budget for PR. Again, that's something that we haven't spent in 2023, but we anticipate maybe wanting to tap into that as some projects start to take shape. The accounting fee has gone up a little bit, so we're anticipating 11,400 for 2023. It's going up to 12,270 for 24. We've got business for 15,000. That's the maximum amount that Jim Armstrong can bill us per his contract. But historically, we never actually end up spending that much. So what we've forecasted for 2023 would be $10,000, although it's probably unlikely that we'll even hit that level of expense. CFO is at 12,000. There's no change there. There's no change in the bookkeeper at 8,100. Appraisal services. So this year we had originally budgeted 1,000. We ended up spending 2. That's because of the Excellus appraisal. It was a little bit more involved than our appraisals that we've had in our industrial park. We are proposing a $3,000 budget for appraisal services for next year, just to give us a little bit of additional wiggle room. There are some things we would like to reopen discussions on, potentially new industrial park site. You know, really think that that's kind of a key thing, and if we can try to manage a project like that at the same time as Willer Review, would be needing appraisal services. Live streaming, we've cut out of our budget, obviously, the past couple of years. Internet and network support, we're actually budgeting a little bit less than we did in 2023. We're proposing 5,200, although it doesn't look like we'll even spend that much this year. We're estimating our forecast at 4,700, so that's probably overestimating on the budget side a little bit. Payroll services haven't changed that much. 3,800 is what we're budgeting. And then legal, we had budgeted 15,000 for 2023. We haven't spent anything. We're forecasting maybe 5,000, but I doubt that we'll even spend that. But we're proposing another 15,000 in the budget just in case. Most of Rob's legal fees are covered directly by the companies and their projects. This would be if we had something that was just for us that we needed Rob to do that isn't tied to a specific project and a developer. So that's the breakdown of the professional service side of things. General office, there's not much change. We're proposing a budget of 12,300 in that category. There's, you know, this is one of the cases in 2023 where our actual went over our budget. That's mostly because of the furniture purchase that we made. We are proposing a slightly higher furniture and equipment budget than we did in 2023. That's mostly because, you know, there's some additional artwork and things that we're thinking about doing with the office just to kind of finish up this build out. So that's a placeholder. Otherwise, nothing else has really changed substantially in that category. Administrative and technical, again, this is more or less the same, so this is where things like our membership dues reside, so our membership to Greater Rochester Enterprise, our membership to the Chamber of Commerce, our, newspaper subscriptions, that kind of thing are all here. That is $14,520 budget, for 2024. Then we've got our insurance, this would be on our properties, I believe, right? That's the insurance category, so that would include, this office, I think we have insurance, Excellus building, I think Deer Run we might have.
And that, it also includes the officers' liability
Liability,
insurance.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's there, and then we've got just $2,000 miscellaneous, which breaks down, we save roughly $1,000 for meetings, although we haven't traditionally spent that. If we thought about doing some kind of, board strategic planning day or something, then, maybe we tap into that for some food kind of thing. And then another $1,000 for, contingency. Travel and conferences, we've kept at our $5,000 budget level. Repairs and maintenance, that is one that has gone up significantly, so we budgeted $3,500 in 2023. We're budgeting $10,540 for 2024. Main reason being the Excellus building, so with nothing concrete in terms of what the future of that is gonna look like, we've now included in this, so this historically was mowing at Deer Run, but this now also includes the mowing for Excellus and the utilities, and, I mean, it's bare bones, but
Say
that's what's
very
in
bare
there.
bones.
Would that include cost of heating?
Utilities.
Yes, yeah, so it would include, heat and water and that
For
kind of
Excellus.
thing for Excellus. But that's basically at a vacancy level. I mean, we're talking about budgeting for sort of what the smallest amount is. And that's also why our forecast is, for 2023, is just over $9,000, because we're, building into the remainder of the year utilities, and then also some contingency costs for things like winterizing the irrigation system and that kind of thing. Then we've got $5,000 for marketing and promotion. This would be for like a new brochure or any other IDA marketing that we do. And then the loan expense, and that is broken down into underwriting, legal, and auditing. So the auditing is where the single audit fee goes. The legal, we put in $1,000 on legal, although we don't typically spend it, again, because the projects cover the legal fees. And then it tends to actually be the same with the underwriting, but we put it there just in case there's additional expense. So that brings our total operating expenses to $510,000. With a net operating income of just over $1 million. Now moving on to other income and other expenses, we project to use the remainder of our, I think this is a typo here, Colleen. The 2023 forecast says 113 in governmental grants. It should be the 93,000. I think you added 2022 and 2023 numbers together.
No, if you look on the, where it breaks out, it includes the 20,000 from the county.
Oh, you're right, because we didn't originally budget for that.
Right.
That's
Okay,
right.
that was something that came about after the fact.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that 113 that we're forecasting is the remainder of the payout of our ESD grant, which we haven't sought reimbursement for yet, and then the 20,000 in ARPA funds that we're expecting from the county. That was an item that came about after the previous budget was passed. You will notice that we don't have anything budgeted in terms of government grant income for 2024, mostly because we don't know what grants we may need to seek and in what dollar amounts. On the other expense side, so we've got we probably should add the 113 to this here, to the governmental grants on the other expense, because it should also include the county's 20,000.
Yeah. just, yeah, you have to do, count for that 20 coming in.
So we'll update that. So the site development work that you see on the forecast side, the 50,689, that is the amount that is expected to actually come out of the IDA's funds. Once the ARPA money has been paid and once the remaining Empire State Development Grant has been paid, that 50,000 and change will be the IDA's own contribution. Then what we're budgeting for 2024 would be to include another $50,000 in the budget for site development. Could be potentially for Willard, but the thought was actually maybe to, again, reopen the discussion on the search for an industrial park site and have some funds set aside that could support studies or whatever kinds of work might need to be done to assess site viability. So that is our proposal. With that additional site development expense, that would bring our net income for the year down to $968,000 for the 2024 budget. Any questions?
Well, your 2023 forecast numbers have to be changed.
Yes, we'll update that once we get the below.
Yep. But the 968 looks like a solid number at this point.
Yeah.
For 2024.
Yeah, that's the only really question is, well, the Excellus building.
Based
which we
on
don't
what?
know anything
Right.
on that.
And that, again, we didn't budget anything on the revenue side for that. Obviously, you know, we would anticipate some lease income or potential sale income or, you know, whatever happens there. And then hopefully we won't end up hitting the expenses that we've projected. But again, it's just to try to give us sort of a, based on what we know, here's what we think.
And I say, kind of going back to long term, what the Finger Lakes Rail goes away, well, the pilot expires soon, but then that will probably be renegotiated again.
I don't know. There have been some discussions with the other counties about trying to get some rail permissions and some access to head from where Finger Lakes Rail runs currently up to where CSX runs up in Lyons. I know the Wayne County IDA has an interest in trying to get that to be more of a continuous.
Is there an existing rail line there now?
There is, I believe, it's just not currently in use. You know, railroads can be kind of territorial, and I think it's been difficult for Finger Lakes Rail and CSX to come together and come to terms.
Yeah.
But essentially, the goal would be to help, you know, freight move easier heading west. Because right now, my understanding is everything on Finger Lakes Rail that has to head west of us has to go east to Pinellas and then get interchange with CSX and then come back. Whereas this would essentially have them go from Geneva north to Lyons and then
Would make more
head
sense,
west.
certainly.
So who knows I don't know what's happening there. It's really, the rail line doesn't run much through Seneca County there except for there's a very small sliver. So it was really Ontario and Wayne that need to kind of figure out some of those pieces. So I'm not sure what may happen with a potential pilot for the rail.
Does Bruno Bach have a rail siding?
No,
Did they ever?
no, we've never had anything.
I'm surprised.
No. Out of Geneva, essentially, things get transloaded out of Geneva if needed, or Syracuse.
All right, so we need a vote on the budget.
So, Ben, any other questions for Sarah, Kelly?
No, looks good.
Looks good.
It's very thorough, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I make a motion to accept the budget as proposed.
I'll second. Kelly, roll.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
Mr. Kine, absent, motion carried.
Any other business?
No?
So then, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, yes.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Next, definitely welcome to stay. Next item is
Yeah.
the Seneca County Funding Court. We have our quorum here between Bob Kernan and myself. So first item on the agenda is approval of the funding court meeting minutes from March 17th of 2023.
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No one opposed? Motion carried. Next is Sarah, review the engagement letter for the 2023 audit.
So Mengel Metzger Bars again submitted an engagement letter to the funding corp. Their combined fees for the 2022 audit were $2,950. What they are proposing for the 2023 funding corp audit is 3,100. So marginal, $50 increase. The breakdown is 2,400 for the audit and then 700 for the audit work regarding our parents reporting.